Hello, our lecture today is about energy policy. There are a number of tools that can be used by policymakers to affect energy consumption and production. During this chapter, we are going to focus mainly on three different types of tools. Number one, energy price controls. Number two, taxes. And number three, subsidies. Let's start with number one, which is energy price control. Sometimes the governments would like to set prices higher or lower than the market price in order to encourage or discourage consumers from consuming this commodity. For example, in developing countries, governments would like to encourage consumers to use specific types of energy for cooking, for example, in order to use consumption of another type of energy which is much more costly for the government. Also, sometimes the government would like to encourage or discourage certain activity on the part of the suppliers by raising or lowering the prices. So, price controls can be related to the consumers or related to the producers. How price controls can affect social welfare. So, let's start with the idea of social welfare before imposing the price control. Let's assume that we are going to study social welfare for a market of coal. In this market, consumers benefit from consuming the commodity, and the producers benefit from selling this commodity. Or, in other words, consumers would like to maximize their satisfaction by consuming coal, and producers would like to maximize their profits from selling coal. And we are going to assume that the market for coal is a competitive market. And as we said before, that competitive market means there are a large number of sellers and buyers in the market, so no one of them affects the price, or in other words, all of them are price takers. Products are homogeneous or identical to each other. No barriers to enter or exit the market. Free availability of information. So market for coal is a competitive market. Number two, there is no externalities in this market. Or in other words, there isn't any other costs or benefits outside this market. or in other words, there isn't any additional cost or benefit to a third party other than the seller or the buyer of the commodity. So let's start with finding equilibrium price and the quantity for coal in this market. Given the demand and supply functions, or the inverse demand and supply functions, as this is price of coal equal 86.7 minus 0.5 QD, and the price of coal equals 6.6 plus QS. So this is inverse demand function. And this is inverse supply function. If you would like to find the equilibrium price and the quantity, equilibrium will be achieved when QD equals QS, or we can write it as 86.7 minus 0.5 QD equals 6.6 plus QS. So equilibrium quantity in this case will be $53.4. And now we are going to substitute on the inverse demand function or the inverse supply function to find the equilibrium price. So equilibrium price will be 6.6 plus 53.4, which is 60. So this can be illustrated graphical as this is quantity and price, demand function, and supply. Point of intersection is point of equilibrium at 53.4 and 60. Let's assume that consumers would like to buy only 1 unit. So if QD equal 1, so price will be 86.7 minus 0.5 multiplied by 1, which is 86.2. And if quantity demanded is 2, so the price in this case will be 86.7 minus 0.5 multiplied by 2, which is 85.7. This is willingness to pay. Consumers' willingness to pay. They would like to pay 86.2 if they are going to get only 1 unit. And they would like to pay 85.7 if they are going to buy 2 units. But the actual market price is 60, as we said before. So we have a consumer surplus, which is the difference between price consumers willing to pay and the actual amount paid by the consumers. So for 1 unit, consumer surplus will be 86.2 minus 60, which is 26.2. So there is a surplus of 26.2 in this case. If they are going to buy 2 units, not 1 unit, it will be 85.7 minus 60. So it will be 25.7, and so on. So returning back to our graph, this is the consumer surplus. Which is the difference between the actual price in the market and the willingness to pay at each unit. So the area of this triangle is the consumer surplus. So say for example this is triangle ABC. We would like to calculate the area of triangle ABC. Area of any triangle is calculated as half base times height. So the height is the difference between the actual price and the highest point, or the price if the quantity equals 0, and it will be 86.7. So it's half multiplied by 86.7 minus 60, and the base is the equilibrium quantity, which is 53.4. So consumer surplus in this case will be 712.89. So this is what is saved for the consumers at price equal 60. What about the producer or the production side? With respect to suppliers, it is the same. This is a perfect competitive market. Firms would like to maximize profit. Each firm is small, so they are price takers. Production costs are function of their output. So cost equal or a function of quantity produced. So profit of this firm will be calculated as total revenue minus total cost, or in other words, price multiplied by quantity minus the cost function. So if you would like to find the maximum amount, it will be found using the first derivative with respect to quantity. So it will be B minus marginal cost. So when B minus marginal cost equals 0, so profit will be maximized. So the producer should produce up to the point where price equal marginal cost. So returning back to the equilibrium, okay, this is the equilibrium price and the quantity graphical. Producer surplus will be achieved as the difference between the actual price and the preferred price by the producer. Say for example, this is a marginal cost equal price equal 6.6 plus QS. Okay, if the producers are going to produce only 1 unit, so marginal cost will be 6.6 plus 1, which is 7.6. Okay, this is for 1 unit of coal. If it's 2, so it will be 8.6, and so on. So this is the marginal cost for 1 unit or for 2 units and so on. But this product will be sold for 60. So the difference between price suppliers are able to take or to produce at, or the marginal cost, and the actual price in the market is the producer surplus. So this is producer surplus. Say for example area BCD. So area of triangle BCD represents producer surplus. It's calculated as half base times height, which is half, multiplied by the base is the equilibrium quantity, 53.4, multiplied by the height, which is the difference between the minimum price, which is the actual price, which is 60, and the minimum price, which is 6.6. So in this case, producer surplus will be 1425.78. The summation of consumer and the producer surplus is the area of triangle ACD. So area of triangle ACD is the summation of producer and the consumer surplus together. And this is known as total net benefit or social welfare. So area of triangle ADC is social welfare or total net benefit. Which is the summation of area of triangle ABC and area of triangle BCD equal 2138.67. What about government price controls? The government would like to set a minimum price of BN, which is higher than the equilibrium market price. Say, for example, at 70. So this means it's illegal to charge a lower price. So at this price, suppliers would like to bring more to market than consumers were willing to pay. So there would be surplus in this market. So if the price were set at 70 and the QD equals 173.4 minus 2 BC or 173.4 minus 2 multiplied by 70, so the quantity will be 33.4. Quantity demanded at price 70 is 33.4. While with respect to quantity supplied, it will be negative 6.6 plus 1 multiplied by 70. It will be 63.4. So the quantity supplied is 63.4, while the quantity demanded is 33.4. Such a policy is hard to maintain without further interference from the government. To buy up the extra coal, for example, or provide subsidies to the coal industry. What if the government would like to set price lower So as a result, price will increase above equilibrium price to allocate the restricted product. And if the government is going to set quantity above the equilibrium quantity, prices will fall below the equilibrium price to allocate the extra product. Also, quantity restrictions cause social losses, just like the price control. So both of them, whether price control or quantity control in a competitive market, will cause loss in welfare and so inefficiency in the market. It will cause instability in the market as well. What about number 3, which is taxes? What are the different types of taxes that can be imposed on energy sources? Mainly, there are 3 different types. Number 1, severance tax. And this is applied at the production level. And these are taxes on producing the resource or severing it from the earth. They are ad valorem tax, most probably ad valorem tax, which are taxed as a percent of the price rather than a unit tax or a constant value. Okay. Number 2, tariffs. Tariffs are applied when energy is traded across countries. This is related to trade of energy across borders. Number 3, excise tax. And this is related to consumption. So we have 3 different types of taxes, one related to consumption or the final consumer, and one related to production, and the third one is related to the international trade of energy. Let's go back to our competitive model and the demand and supply functions. Let's assume that QD equal 18 minus 2b, and the QS equal negative 3 plus 3b. Or we can rewrite the equation as BD, which is the inverse demand function, 9 minus 0.5 QD. And with respect to the inverse supply function, it will be 1 minus 1 over 3 QS. Solving for the equilibrium price and the quantity in this market, so price will be 4.2 and the quantity will be 9.6. So this is 9.6 and this is 4.2. Now suppose that the government is going to impose a unit tax of 3 on these products. So this tax will affect the supply side. So in this case, supply price will increase by 3. Or in other words, the inverse supply curve shifts upward. So this is the new inverse supply curve, which is the old one plus 3. So as a result, we are going to have a new equilibrium point. So in this case, equilibrium will be achieved when BD equal BS plus T. BD 9 minus 0.5 QD and BS plus 3 or 1 plus 1 over 3 QS plus 3. So the equilibrium quantity after solving the equation will be six. So before imposing taxes, the equilibrium quantity was 9.6, and after imposing taxes, the quantity will decrease to 6 instead of 9.6. And with respect to the equilibrium price, it will be 3 instead of 4.2. So as a result of imposing taxes, equilibrium quantity decreases from 9.6 to 6, and equilibrium price decreases from 4.2 to 3. But this is for the supply side. What about the demand side? We would like to calculate price for the demand. It will be 9 minus 0.5 multiplied by the equilibrium quantity, which is 6. So the price will be 6. So in this case, consumers are going to pay 6, but producers are going to get 3. And the difference is the taxes. So if you would like to identify who pays this tax, the demand price goes from 4.2 to 6. So consumers are going to pay 1.8 of the value of the taxes. And with respect to the suppliers, price is going to go from 4.2 to 3. So producers are going to pay 1.2. So the government is going to get 3. This 3 is divided between the consumers and producers as 1.8 from the consumers and 1.2 from the producers. Actually, the impact of taxes on the producers and the consumers depend on the elasticity of the demand and supply curves. Let's take two different cases. This is the inverse demand curve, and this is the supply curve. This is case number 1. If the government is going to impose tax, as we said, that the inverse supply curve will shift upward. And this is the new supply curve. So in this case, the demanders is unwilling to pay a higher price and will cut consumption to 0 if a higher price is imposed. So in this case, suppliers are going to pay the whole tax. Case number 2. Let's assume that the demand, this is the inverse demand function, and this is supply. If the government is going to impose tax, So the supply curve will shift upward. So in this case, the consumers are not willing to take any lower quantity, but will pay any higher price for the given quantity. So in this case, consumers are going to pay the whole tax. So in this case, producers will pay the whole tax. And in this case, consumers will pay the whole tax. Energy subsidies. It is the opposite of the energy tax. It is the same as the analysis of the taxes, but instead of adding the tax to the supply, you would subtract it from the supply side. Or in other words, the consumers in this case would pay a lower price than suppliers receive. So in this case, you can subtract tax from, subtract subsidy from the supply side. Instead of adding taxes to supply side, it's the same, but subtract tax. Or in the demand side, add subsidy to the demand side. So a quick recap. In this chapter, we talked about energy policy. Mainly, we are going to talk about three main tools: controls, whether price or quantity controls, taxes, and finally subsidies. This is the end of our chapter today. Thank you and see you next week.